After the attack at the nightclub in Orlando, Florida on the 16th of June last, the United Nations Security Council published a statement condemning violence against members of the LGBT community. This was the first time that the United Nations has ever taken an official stance on gay discrimination. And surprisingly, a number of countries that have anti-gay laws supported the motion. Two notable countries were Egypt and Russia. Where then is it that draconian laws against members of the LGBT community still exist? Where is it, indeed, illegal to be gay? According to the UN, there are 74 countries on our planet in which it is illegal to be gay. In 13 of these countries, engaging in homosexual activity is punishable by death. Most of the countries with the most severe laws reside in Africa and the Middle East. In these countries, long prison sentences, psychiatric treatment, whipping, hard labour, or indeed stoning are common punishments for engaging in homosexual behaviour. One of the worst countries in the world in which to be gay is Uganda. If deviants are caught in Uganda, they can face up to life imprisonment. These laws were introduced by the British in the 19th century, but were not actually used until just over a decade ago. At the beginning of the 2000s, US Bible Belt Christian missionaries arrived in Uganda and started anti-gay hate speeches, and gave anti-gay hate speeches. They warned locals that homosexuals wanted to kidnap and convert, well, not kidnap, they wanted to convert their children and lead them astray into their homosexual ways. This led to an anti-gay law being adopted in 2014. Initially, this law allowed for the death penalty to be applied to homosexuals, but this was thankfully overturned. So this aspect of the law was overturned. Another country in which it is not exactly optimal to be a member of the LGBT community is Iran. Iran still has capital punishment and adheres to a strict form of Sharia law. According to the Quran, any two men that engage in sexual activity must be punished. The Quran, however, does not dictate how these men should be punished. And it also states that if the men are to repent, then they should be forgiven. Many human rights groups have stated that Iran has executed between 4,000 and 5,000 gay members of the LGBT community since 1979. In Afghanistan, pertaining to the LGBT community was indeed punishable by death, until US intervention, recently enough. And since US intervention, the punishment has been changed to imprisonment instead of death. Moving away from the Middle East and Africa, Russia is known for its severe anti-gay laws. In 2013, the Russian government and parliament passed the anti-gay propaganda law, which dictates that any discussion or display of non-traditional sexual behaviour is prohibited in the country, and indeed punishable by imprisonment. Ostensibly, this is to protect children. In Belize, it has been a crime to be gay since 1988. And today, in Belize, in their Immigration Act, they have enshrined that even outsiders, foreigners, tourists, are not allowed to enter the country if they are members of the LGBT community. The UN and many human rights organisations have tried for years to end discrimination against members of the LGBT community. But, unfortunately, the worst offenders have not reformed any of their anti-gay laws. Curiously, in Iran, even though it's not accepted in any way to be gay, they do accept members of the transgender community, as long as they actually change their gender. Indeed, the Iranians will actually pay for transgender surgery. This gives the impression that Iran could be quite liberal, but based on my research, I've discovered that quite a few Iranians have been practically forced to have a sex change if they have been caught engaging in homosexual behaviour. And even though Iran likes to claim that they're more liberal in this regard, thousands of Iranians have had sex changes that they later regret. In this country, Ireland, it was punishable with up to 8 years of imprisonment until the early 90s to pertain to the LGBT community. Senator David Norris and President Mary Robinson made great efforts at the time to eradicate these laws, and indeed they were successful. Just 2 years ago, a referendum that took place here in Ireland saw the Irish population vote emphatically in favour of marriage equality. And I've seen, over the past couple of years, a seismic shift in the attitude of the Irish people towards the LGBT community as a result. So there is some positivity, and let's hope it will continue to move in that way.